Welcome back to Shit Creek Survivors. We share real stories of resilience, real tools for resilience, and hope for anyone stuck in their own shit creek right now. Today's episode is about grief and what survival looks like when life keeps changing. My guest today is Angie Hanson. She lost her son, her husband, and her brother in a brief period of time, and had seen grief ripple through her family. Instead of perfect words, she chose presence, honesty, and the courage to keep moving forward. Out of that grief, Angie created Butterflies and Halos, a greeting card line that says what people are actually feeling, like, I don't know what to say. Let's go eat one of those damn casseroles, because sometimes showing up matters more than the right thing to say. This conversation is about resilience, community, faith, and quiet choices we make every day to bounce forward. Angie, thank you so much for joining us today. It's such a privilege, and I am so excited for you to share your story with our audience because I think it's very powerful. And without further ado, Angie, if you just want to kind of introduce yourself to us and let us know what's going on.
Well, thank you, Cam, for having me on. I immediately, when I saw your call for, a podcaster guest, I was like, this is right up my alley. And it started with your name of your podcast, just because through my story of grief and loss is I find humor and snarky and sarcasm to be a lifeline for many people. And it's not immediate, but once you get there, you understand. And so I'm definitely glad to be here on your show.
Yeah, we feel so blessed. So let's just get straight into the story. Tell us where it begins.
For sure. It began in actually 2006. My husband, Jack, and we had our daughter, Gracie, who was 4, and our son, Garrett, who had just turned 1. And he turned 1 on June 21st, 2006. And then 6 days later, on June 27th, 2006, Garrett died. And Garrett died in his sleep. And he died suddenly, and he was at his daycare provider's house. And when I received that phone call from the sheriff's department, my whole world just came crumbling down in an instant. And we didn't know whys, we didn't know hows, we didn't know anything. And if you can imagine, the fury of chaos in those moments. And that continued, really. We later learned that our son Garrett had died from an undetected heart defect. And it always causes sudden death. And basically, his right coronary artery was kinked. And so, again, you imagine, I'm 34 years old, and my world's turned upside down. And really, my husband, Jack, and we had to, at that moment, decide how we were going to put 2 feet in front of, and start walking and moving while grieving and while, attending to our 4-year-old daughter who had also just suffered an immense loss. And so we did the best we could. And, we loved each other, and we loved on our daughter. We had a huge family support system, and we had a community of friends as well. And we did what we could. I always say I don't remember really the first 6 months of that loss. And I remember things, but I don't remember things, and I only remember the really bad, just how do I move and how do I live, because I didn't want to without my son. And it was about 6 months later that I decided that, my daughter Gracie and my husband Jack, I needed to live for them, and I needed to survive and move forward with them, however that looked. And I just slowly saw my, the layers. I've equated it before, and other people has too, just like think of an onion, our layers are slowly peeling off. And that was the hard outer shell that I had created from my loss. And it was slowly unfolding. And so fast forward, to a year later, we made it. 1 year after our son died, we were still living. we were thriving. We were still sad. There
Mhm.
was just this empty hole, that was never going to be replaced, and so we just had to learn how to live with it, and, a few months after that, probably so that would have been June 2007, and then, about September-ish of 2007, my husband Jack started having some issues, and, he was having issues with his eye. It was a back and forth, and, finally, we found out that Jack was diagnosed. He had ocular melanoma. And so he had cancer and a tumor in his eye. And
Wow.
he was diagnosed stage 4 terminal cancer. It had spread to his brain, his liver, and his spleen. And so at that moment, we knew Jack had the fight of his life. And we didn't know what that was going to look like. I knew Jack was going to die. I didn't know when. I had hoped, obviously, that Jack would live a long life with us, but we knew then. So I started grieving Jack, in that moment because the doctor said, "You won't survive this." And, you hear
Mhm.
those words and you're just like, uh, he has to survive this because this is our rock. This is our person, and
Yeah.
he, Jack, he fought like heck. He did all the things, the chemo, the radiation. He did everything he possibly could. And, um, Jack ended up losing. He battled for 16 months. He lost his life on February 8th, 2009. So just 2.5 years after our son had died, I was left a widow and a lost mom. And here it's just my daughter, Gracie, and I, and at this time, Gracie's 6. She's about to turn 7. And,
Mhm.
our whole world is completely different. It's completely different. And, my brother, Seth, and his wife, Joey, we lived on a farm acreage. They lived in the small house on our farm. So they were a constant presence to us while we were grieving and while we were there. And my brother, Seth, had been battling a brain tumor for about 5 years. And his brain tumors had always been graded like grade 1, so a low grade. Seth never had to do any chemo or radiation. He had 2 craniotomies to remove the brain tumors during those 5 years. And on in March, beginning of March, just month after my husband died, my brother Seth started having issues again. And, at that moment, I'm just like, really, what the F is happening? I just really,
Right.
I was like, this cannot be happening again. And he had his third craniotomy on March 13th of that year, 2009. And it just came back with a vengeance. And he was going to have to do chemo radiation because I think it was graded between a 3 and 4. And, Seth he was a healthy, he didn't drink, he didn't, he was a healthy guy, 30 years
Mhm.
old, just been married a year and a half. And, he just could not bounce back. That tumor just came back with a huge vengeance. And my brother Seth ended up dying, on April 7th, 2009. So exactly 2 months after my husband. And so that's the hard and that is kind of what led me into where I am today, obviously. But it's just those losses really just I don't know. People always say, like, I hear the word, "Oh, you're a great survivor," but I don't picture myself as a survivor, because
Mhm.
my survival looked like standing up again and again after all these losses. And life just kept on coming and trying to knock me down, but I just kept on trying to stand.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that can't be an easy story to tell. I appreciate that you did. And finding the courage to move forward, man,
Yeah.
that's gotta be it. Because I know there's a lot of people out there who are in a situation that they know they need to push through, but they're having trouble finding that motivation or momentum or whatever it may be. Do you remember at all what helped you push forward? Was it maybe you thought of your daughter, you're like, I'm doing whatever I need to for her, or was it, in honoring those who have passed, or was it how did you approach that if you can remember it all?
Oh yeah, really for me, it's just, like how grief had changed me. So I would say definitely those first few months after my brother had died, it was how do I even survive, right?
Hmm.
My body and my brain were all thinking just this is not how our story is going to end. And I was like, how do I live with this loss? And that was
Hmm.
kind of the things I had to ask myself. I didn't want to live in my loss. I wanted to live with my loss. And, that was something that I started journaling. I started journaling when Garrett died. And so when Garrett died, when I couldn't sleep at night, when my tears were just abundant and going, and I would journal until I stopped crying. And once I had that release, I felt I felt okay. And then, going back and looking at those journal entries, honestly, I didn't think I was progressing. I thought I was stuck. But
Yeah.
I saw that progression. I was like, holy moly, like in the first 6 months, like I said, my journal entries were dark. They were ugly. They were not pretty. I look at them, I mean, they were not pretty. But then I saw this evolution of my grief happening as I journaled, and I saw the shift and the change. And it wasn't it wasn't one big thing. It was a very small repeatable things, like, just sometimes my journal entries look the same every day.
Hmm.
And but journaling gives your pain somewhere to go. It really does. And um a lot of people are like, "Well, I can't even form a sentence. I can't think." And I'm just like, "Well, you don't have to write a big thing. Like some days my journal entry may have looked like today was a really shitty day, I didn't get anything done. All I did was sit on the couch and cry. But that's okay too. That is okay.
Yeah.
We don't have to do big things. Like I said, we can do small things. And as long as we do those small things repeatably, we're going to survive. And survival
Yeah.
looks different for everybody in grief, but that is what we're trying to do as well, just trying to survive. And another
Yeah.
thing, community was huge for me, leaning on my friends and community. Um, it was a reminder that I wasn't doing it alone.
Hmm.
Um, and, once I got to that part, faith, I lost some of my faith. And I had to get that back again. And faith it finally gave me something to lean into, and I thought that God had done this to me and why. But what I learned was God didn't do this to me. Life just happened. And God has been carrying me this whole time. And, and whatever your higher power is that you look to, and if it's not God or whatever, I mean, there is something carrying us, and we don't do this on our own. And that's my belief. I feel like I did not get where I am today after losing my son 19 years ago, and everybody else 16 years ago. And I've had other loss since then as well. But um, God gives you the courage to step forward each day.
Yeah. Well said, for sure. May I ask, when it comes to journaling, like when you journal, are you like documenting the day, or are you talking to a particular person? I did some of that. And like, I know that when I would do it, it would be like a rant, and I'd almost be talking to someone. And when I look back at it now, it almost looks like I'm either talking to myself or I'm talking to something that I hope is there. But I'm
Mhm.
like, if this is true, why did this happen? Show me that, you know what I mean? So it's almost like a tit for tat kind of, and I would pop out of bed and have to write some stuff down. And it really helped to dump that emotion into, because you have to formulate the words,
Mhm.
compared to just feeling the feeling. So I know there's power to it. Do you
Yeah.
remember, were you just documenting or were you talking to somebody, or how
I
did
was
that work for
talking
you?
to someone. I was definitely
Yeah.
so a lot of my journal entries in the beginning were talking to my son Garrett. Like, I
Hmm.
would be specifically talking to him like, "Mommy misses you." I'd say it was basically a conversation with him. Then there was anger in some of those entries where I was mad at God. I'm like, I'm yelling at God in my journal entry. Then there's messages, or journal entries to my husband Jack, like we grieve differently as spouses. You grieve differently. Like, I felt like Jack was doing it wrong. He wasn't doing it wrong, he was doing it his way, right? But in that moment I didn't see that. But so I would yell at Jack. I'd be like, Jack didn't do this. He's not doing this. Why doesn't he care? And it's just like,
Hmm.
and looking at those, it's like, what? Well, he did care. And then I learned a lot more about Jack's thoughts. So Jack was a very strong man, but when he became ill and he had cancer, we had a caring bridge site set up for him to be able to let family and friends know what was going on with him. Instead of constantly calling people and all that stuff. And um, Jack was a very good writer as well, but his emotions and his feelings came out. So when he couldn't sleep at night during his cancer journey, he would write in this Caring Bridge site. And after I read a lot of his, after he had died, and I just started reading a lot more of his Caring Bridge entries, and I was like, wow, he was feeling the exact same things I was feeling, that we all felt, right? Probably. And
Hmm.
but and it was kind of the same thing. All I think all we ever want out of all our losses is we wanted hope, and we wanted clarity that we were going to be okay. We wanted, and I think that's kind of all. I don't think we could see. We want to know what's going to happen in the future, I guess I'd say.
Oh yeah.
And we want to know that there's going to be sunshine in a year, that there's going to be love, that there's going to be all this warmth. And when you are in the depth of that, you can't see that at all. And
You
I
don't
think,
even believe it's possible.
no, you don't believe it's possible.
So
And
you're
that's,
almost choosing to go on knowing that you'll never be happy. Like
yeah,
that's the decision you're making. Yeah,
yeah,
okay. Yeah.
exactly, 100%. And so, like, but we all wanted the same thing, but we were not even communicating that to each other, because I
Mhm.
just think there was just so much loss and so much sadness that it turned into guilt and blame in a sense. But
Mhm.
I would say that in that moment, though, I mean, Jack and I we still had a strong marriage. We had a good marriage, and we still loved. And,
Mhm.
but I didn't see all that
Mhm.
until later on. It's
It's
interesting.
tough. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's tough when you're going through it because you're feeling these emotions, although and in a lot of circumstances, especially when you look back, because hindsight's 2020, it's like you were feeling these emotions, and although they didn't have a place in the room that you were in, they were real
Yeah.
as much as it is. So you almost have to like let yourself feel these emotions so they pass,
Hmm.
so that you're able to move through it and be like, now that I'm through with that,
Yeah.
this whatever that was, let me look at this with clearer eyes. But we try to hold that down and be like, no, I'm
Yeah.
not supposed to be feeling that. I'm supposed to be right here, focused, present, caretaking, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
were you able at any point to monitor kind of like your own personal health while you were going through this process of losing these people in such a short period? Or were you just in panic mode the whole time, just trying to attend to whoever needed something at the time they needed it?
I would say I was just kind of a helper fixer. I thought what I could fix it, right? And what I have
Hmm.
learned since is there is no fixing to be done, right? We aren't there to fix anything, because what's broken and death, for example, cannot be fixed, it's just how we kind of guide others and how we walk alongside each other and different things like that, how we listen. But no, my health wise, I mean, for me, I really didn't eat a lot, so I did not take care of my body physically eating wise. I lost a lot of weight. Different things like
Hmm.
that. And then, I never I tell this story a lot. This is one of the losses, but I talk about, choices, and I always say we have the 3 Cs, choices, chances, and changes. And I talk about it within relations to my sister-in-law, Jack's sister.
Hmm.
Um, we all have choices in life. So I chose to survive and live, right? And my sister-in-law, Brooke, who is an amazing gal, she chose the path of drinking and the path of darkness, and so, she lost her battle, with alcoholism. So Jack's sister died in 2014, and so what that did is it left their parents without any surviving children. And, Brooke just didn't know how to move forward after she lived in Colorado. We live in Nebraska. So she was not present, like as present when Garrett died. So she felt
Hmm.
guilt there. And then when Jack was sick and Jack died, she felt guilt there.
Hmm.
And so, she started drinking a lot, and she lost her job, and she just really, really struggled, and not because she didn't want to, she just didn't know how to, and
Hmm.
her her comfort, her journaling, let's say in a sense, was the alcohol, and that brought her the peace and comfort for her. And but that's why I'm like, I had choices, and my choice was I can give up today or I can survive. And so I
Hmm.
chose the survival, and by doing that, I had to take the chances. And those chances were like falling in love again, remarrying again, um,
Hmm.
living each day. I'm taking that chance and how scary it was. And then what happened was I slowly saw all those changes. Those changes became beautiful, wonderful things. I
Yeah.
did remarry, and I married a wonderful man who supports everything that I've gone through, supports my people, acknowledges me talking and yearning for them or grieving them, still. And but that's I wish that my sister-in-law Brooke could have found that. But
Yeah.
that's why I always talk about, for me, my biggest health issue was obviously just the not eating just because I didn't want to, you know?
Right. Yeah.
But,
I get
uh,
it. Yeah. We.
yeah, but, like, for Brooke, like I said, I always I think, like, if I would have turned towards alcohol to, say, fix me or to help me or do any of that, where would I be today? And I'm so thankful that I chose the other way, that I chose, to survive.
Yeah. I've found in my story, and again, looking back, it's a lot clearer. Um, what alcohol did for me is it was almost like a pause button. I think I sort of knew that in order to recover, there was going to be a lot of work, and that mountain looked too high. And so I'd wake up and, you know, uh, I'd hit the pause button. I would just do it again.
Mhm.
And then my mind would create the loopholes, or I would create the loopholes of like, well, it's Wednesday. I'll start next Monday. Or then when it gets to Monday, I'm like, and then that's the day I'm supposed to do this work. I'd panic. And, the only person holding you accountable in that scenario truly is yourself.
Yeah,
Um, and I'm sorry that she couldn't find a way out of that. It's, uh, it's very sad.
yeah. Brooke was she was brilliant, she was smart, she was witty, she was loved deeply, she was that person, and that's why it was so hard when she just couldn't find that. But I don't place or hold any blame on her, she just didn't know
Hmm.
how to, right? And
Right.
she didn't have the strength to, she didn't have the support. Like, she was in Denver, she came home for a while, then she thought she was doing better, her marriage failed and everything was happening to her, and everything that I was going through, she was also going through, but in a different way, right? And,
Yeah.
um, but it's just I tell her story because I tell it because that those are the choices. And there is a you can either have it this way during grief and loss, or you can have it this way. And
Yeah.
two different ways are gonna make a two different, you know, it's that fork in the road. And hers went dark and mine lit up, and it's
Yeah. You're
yeah.
right. That is a great example of the same situation and two different roads.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. For some reason, that alcohol road seems like it would be easier, but actually just it makes things worse. It just delays it. So then you got to, it's you're delaying feeling the feelings a lot of times, you
Hmm.
know. I, I heard recently that an alcoholic's problem isn't alcohol. And I don't know how much I agree with this, but I'm in the program and I wouldn't say this probably in a meeting, but they say that the problem isn't actually the alcohol, it's whatever the alcoholic is running from. And yeah, that definitely applies in my life.
Yeah.
Perfect. That was a great example.
Yeah, I've actually heard that too. Yeah, and I've actually just recently heard that too. We probably heard it from the same place. I don't know, but I don't but it was,
It's
I just thought it, like cuz I heard that and I thought of Brooke and I was just like, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an interesting view on it. You know what
Mm,
I mean? Because I'm a former police officer. I would go to houses repetitively, and it would be millionaires, or it could be just like the guy at the bus stop who won't leave kind of deal. They all had the same problem. You know what I mean? They were
yeah.
all dealing with alcohol. It was just unbelievable. I never realized how dangerous alcohol was. I really didn't.
Yeah.
I never fully absorbed it. And I would go on calls and I would see these people. I'd be like, just stop drinking.
Yeah.
And I found out the hard way later on, it's not as easy as stop drinking. It's like when you have to stop drinking, you have to start feeling the feelings you're avoiding. So it
Mhm.
becomes this trap, if you will. You're trying to get comfortable, but it becomes a trap because you can't get comfortable without it. Your body gets used to it, so you need more, and then your body starts literally failing if it doesn't have it. It's such a problem, as is any addiction.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
anyways, that's a great example. Same problem, two different routes, and
Mhm.
one involved. Yeah. Anyways,
Yes.
now that's a good segue to what tools do you think you created or picked up along the way that either gave you hope, gave you a to-do list, whatever it may be, to give you momentum to keep moving? Is there anything that you could pinpoint?
Well, I guess I would tell your listeners or anyone listening to that, first off, you don't need to heal all at once, and I think that's one of
Mm,
the things that people think that they have to heal all at once, and it's not. It's going to be a forever journey, and I mean, I would say I'm still healing, and
mm-hmm.
every small step counts, and whether you have to get outside, you have to get some sunshine, because I
Mm,
mean, that can change, drinking the water, taking the walks, you know, just just simple things like that. And I know people are just like, well, that sounds stupid, just kind of like what you said earlier, like it just stop drinking, right?
yeah.
Um, but those small steps really, really do count. And then just another tool, I want people to understand that grief and joy, they can exist at the same time. And
Yeah.
you can feel, you can feel really sad and you can feel griefy that day, but you can have joy at the same time. And that's really important to know and remember because people think it's black and white, that it's an either and, but it's not either or, it's a both and. And that's so, so important for people. And then also just that you're not broken from this death. You're not broken from the deaths. you're just adapting, you're adapting to a new life, a new form, a new, a new a new whole entire life. And it's hard in the beginning. It's hard to see all that. But these are simple tools for people to really just take, because survival really
Yeah.
isn't getting back to who you were. We don't want to be back to where we were. It's about becoming someone new, and um
Mm,
it really is. And if you can do that with more compassion and depth and resilience, um you will get there. And I've said this before, I miss my people immensely, but it's hard to see them in my life today. Here I am, like I said, 19 years later. Um, I, that's like I said, survival isn't getting back to where or who you were before. It's
mhm.
creating something newer and better, and I love my life now. And I do miss my people, but it's just a different life. And
Yeah.
it's a good life. And you know, I guess I just want people to know that really their toolkits are just taking it slow, they're um making sure that really you have those people that you can reach out to when you and if you need to.
Yeah.
Um like you're not broken. You don't need to be fixed. You just need to be held. And, those are the things that friends or family can do, sitting beside you, listening to you tell the story over and over again,
Yeah.
saying the person's name that died. I don't ever get tired of hearing my people's names, and I want to
Mhm.
still hear stories. I continue to hear stories of like I run into people that knew Jack, and they tell me a story, something funny, and it brings joy to me. It really brings joy. It does not bring pain to me anymore. It brings immense joy, and I love it. And but yeah, your toolkit is very small after losses, and it's just this. It's surviving today and getting out of bed one step at a time. Really.
Yeah. Because life changes kind of slow. I mean, it can change fast, a
Mm.
sudden thing, but when you're reacclimating,
Yep.
that's so you said such a cool thing. And it hit me that because for a long time, I was trying to become who I was before.
Mhm.
And it just wasn't working.
Yeah.
And I had to come to terms with that I'm not who I was before.
Mhm.
Um, and so I had to kind of let go of that identity and embrace what was happening. And for a long period, it was dark, but it's weird that all those dark days led to, I don't know when it happened, but a little bit of light someday. And then
Mhm.
a little bit. And another thing that you said was so interesting is like, I think for a long time when we're experiencing like a loss, I think we only think we're allowed to feel sad.
Mhm.
We're only allowed to feel sad, and I think that in a lot of way creates isolation. You get your world really small, and then you've lost a little bit of that community around you. You're trying to
Mhm.
handle it on your own, which you're not equipped to do. We've
Exactly.
found a lot through this podcast that we are communal creatures,
Yes.
and it is soothing to talk to somebody, even when you're not talking about what's bothering you. I think the study said like 8 minutes of talking to somebody about not even what's bothering you can actually bring you out of that fog.
Mhm.
Um, so that's really interesting. Make sure you have that community around you. Yeah, that is such a good point. And I we talked a little bit about before hitting record, but I think a lot of times today we've almost been programmed with this idea that we're always supposed to be happy.
Yep.
um, and I think that's the way TV sort of looks, and that's the way that, any product you buy looks. It's going to make you happy, 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 happy. Do these things, go here, eat here, happy. And the truth is, that's not the way life goes.
No,
Life
absolutely not.
is like a mishmash of happy and sad and whatever. But I think a lot of times people are like so focused on not even being happy, but looking like they are.
Mhm.
And you know what I mean?
Yeah, the
And
fake it till you make it type of thing.
right. and anything below is unacceptable. When the truth is you need to feel like we were programmed to have these emotions, and I don't know why, and I don't know why we got to go through all this and all this kinds of stuff, but it seems like we all kind of go through these emotions, so
Mhm,
they appear to be natural. Another thing is like when we feel these emotions, I think we think we're broken sometimes,
mhm.
like what's wrong with me,
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
and but at the same time, everyone in this world has these same emotions.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a crazy thing, but
Yeah,
I
that is why I say both and because yeah, you have to feel sad to know how to move forward, a little bit. And it's just the both and you have to sit in your grief. And the biggest thing too is people have to give themselves grace. You have to give
mm,
yourself grace, whatever that looks like. Just acknowledge that you're sad that day, and if you are in the depths of a loss, grief loss, like a death, if you get out of bed and get moved from the bed to the couch, you've accomplished something today, right? And
yeah,
then I think the biggest thing, like you said too, people, if they start hearing themselves laugh, like maybe you're in that moment where you can't do anything, but you're watching a show and you laugh and you think, oh my gosh, I can't laugh, right? I shouldn't be
right,
laughing. Why? Of course you can laugh. Of
yeah,
course you can laugh. That is what is healing. That's what's healing. I mean, that's what healing is called. That's showing you that you're taking small steps.
yeah,
It's okay. Light is coming back into you.
yeah. And something I was guilty of was like I could tell the light was coming, but I didn't approve of bad days in between. So
Yeah.
I could tell like things are going good today. So I'd sort of try to clinch and hold
Uh-huh.
on to what was happening. So I even down to the activities I did. If I do these three things, the day will be good. And I
Hmm.
try to hold it really hard, but that's not the way life works either.
No. No.
It seems that life is more enjoyed when you live it loosely in a way. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
You kind of accept what's been given to you and
Hmm.
kind of laugh at the good, laugh at the bad, and just like, okay,
Yeah.
and then you just keep moving. But man, is that easy to say right now
For
and
sure.
so hard to do when you're flat on the floor.
For sure. For
Um,
sure. Yeah. It really, really is. But it's one of those things where you're doing so good and you feel like I've just taken 5 steps forward. I'm on the way, right? And then
mhm,
something happens, like you get that reminder, you get something and it hits you, and so then you take those 3 steps back and you're like,
mhm,
"Okay, this isn't how I wanted it to be," and then you have to get back to that thing. It's the same thing how you said you just wanna hold yourself in that one spot because things have been going good, but in grief and in loss, it's I'll tell you, I've been at it now for 19 years with losing my son, and I still have days where I've what I've built and what I have done since those losses, and where I'm at, people would think, "Well, she's doing great," but there are days I don't feel great. I don't wanna participate. I don't want to smile. I wanna cry at a sad song. I wanna do that, and I just wanna be, and you have to allow yourself to take those steps back, and like I said, just give yourself grace that you know that you have the tools to still move forward each and every
mhm,
day, with a beautiful outlook that, there is beautiful light and love so many steps forward.
yeah. So let's talk about what you have done since going through all this and how you kind of took action in this world. I want to hear all about it.
For sure. It started, back in 2022, June of 2022. I decided that I was tired of the cliche greeting cards out there. So I was tired of the I'm so sorry for your losses. I'm so sorry for this. And I don't thinking of you. I'm like, we have to have better words for people. We have to have better communication. And so I'm just like, I want to have cards that say exactly how we feel as a grieving person. And one of my very first cards I made was, I don't know what to say. Let's go eat one of those damn casseroles. So,
I
you
love
know,
it.
I would give
That's
that to
great.
my best friend if her husband died, right? I wouldn't give her a thinking of you card because we don't talk that
Right.
way to each other. And so then I'm just like, okay, then like, I didn't bring the casserole. I brought the wine, my PJs, and my listening heart, right? And so that's another thing that, we just I was like, how do we talk to people? How do we communicate with each other? And let's add grace into these cards. Let's say the words that I'm like, I can create all the words that you don't have, like all the world doesn't have, right? And so
Right.
I created a online business called Butterflies and Halos. And the butterflies represent, that's my sign from my son is a butterfly, and halos are for all my people that I've lost. And then I created that, and I currently have over like 220 greeting cards. And it's just, they're all from snark to humor to sass to love to, you know, some religious ones, thoughtful ones, just even cards for parents that have lost a child. There's nothing out there. I've gone down the aisles in Hallmark, I've gone down the aisles in Target and Walgreens, and I've looked at all their cards during the major holidays. Christmas, for example, is here. And there's not one greeting card that speaks to a person that's going through loss.
Hmm.
There's nothing. Valentine's Day, there's not one single card that speaks to somebody that has lost their Valentine. It speaks
Mm.
to, it's all about love and happiness and blah blah blah. And I'm just like, why isn't there that out there for these people? So, there's not a specific sympathy card. I don't even call my cards sympathy cards, because sympathy is like something that happens in within 2 weeks after you've lost somebody. Grief
Hmm.
is forever, right? Loss is forever. So my cards, I call them grief cards, or loss cards. They're not because it's going to be forever. And another reason why I simply started with greeting cards was because I'm like, if you are having a crappy day, and say I don't even know you're having a crappy day, but you're having just one of those days, and I send you a card, you open up that mailbox and you receive a card, and you see that your mind shift and the trajectory of your day is going to change immensely, and you're going to smile and think, Angie's still thinking of me, they're still thinking of me. And I know that, like, we know that, right? So I'm just like, we need to get better at showing up, and we don't have to show up big. We can show up small for our friends and our family or anybody that's going through hard stuff. And I
Yeah.
encapsulate loss as a big thing, whether it's a job loss, a divorce, financial struggles, especially during the holiday months. Whatever your loss looks like, it's relevant and it should be acknowledged. And so that's kind of what I started with, the stationary part of it. And then I also had started writing my memoir in 2019, and I stopped because I thought, who's going to want to read my story? And then
Hmm.
from the pushing of my husband, Chance, who I'm married to now, he's like, Angie, write it. And so he gave me the courage to do it. My daughter, Gracie, who is 23 now, she also gave me the courage to do it. And so I published my memoir, Chapters of a Resilient Heart, in 2024. And
Hmm.
so it's my story of my people, um, how much we love them, who they were, their lives, and how they lived them, and then their losses, and then how we survived. And then there's chapters of hope and resilience and faith and dating and remarrying. And, because when you're a widow and you start dating, um, you don't get nice people saying things to you. They have a vision of a timeline. They think you should wait a long time. Evidently, I don't know. It's crazy, but
Right.
in the widower world, this is a very common theme that if you start dating or talking to somebody or whatever sooner than the world thinks you should, you kind of get ostracized a little, and it's ridiculous. But,
Yeah.
I've kind of always done things on my terms, my own terms, and I kind of just muted a lot of that noise. And but so I talk about dating and remarrying in the book, and then Gracie also has a chapter in the book. We walked through that journey together of how she
Hmm.
kind of had felt being four, losing her brother to, where she is today. And um it's a great book. I love it. It is my heart and joy. And then I've since also written and my hope with that book, also the memoir, it's some people are like, well, is it just it's your story though? I'm like, well, but my story is I use my story to help others. My
Hmm.
story is to help others. And it's
Yeah.
um it's just to remind people that they are seen and they are not alone. And that's my biggest hope with my book, that people are knowing um that they're just seen and heard, and
Yeah.
then I've also written in a couple anthologies, Resilient AF, Stories of Resilience, and then Grace and Grit, and that's more of a faith-based journey of my grief. And then Stories of Family Friends Lost, and then that's kind of more on Jack as a from a widow's perspective. And then I wrote an Advent collection this year, and I wrote about peace. And then I wrote in A Year of Hope, a 365-day devotional, and I picked 5 dates that were important to me to write about and just help other people when they read the
Yeah.
devotional. And I picked like the day that Jack died, Gracie's birthday, um, the Garrett's birthday, his death date, and then my anniversary with Chance. So I
Hmm.
just wanted people to see a lot of that hope, and all that. And so with that, I've become a certified grief coach. And so
Cool.
I do help people, along their journey. And, grief coaching is different than seeing a therapist. We just sit and listen. We don't give them advice. We give them tools. And
Right.
really, it's a great way for people to not feel as much pressure. And so I've really enjoyed that as well. So,
Yeah.
I just, you know, all my work that I've done, my whole mission is just to show that people that you are not alone on this journey of grief. And
Yeah.
we all deserve to feel that love. And and it all exists because I did survive my losses,
Yeah.
and all that. In survival, it taught me that pain doesn't, really, it doesn't disqualify you. It just kind of refines you a little bit. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with everything.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. You've done a lot. That's a lot of work to have done,
Yeah.
uh, and not a lot of time, to tell you the truth.
No,
I think that.
it's kind of just really come afloat, like, in the past couple years. It's really I'm a part of this grief community, and we really just kind of, we're all small businesses just trying to create something for people that are hurting and grieving.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, that's the real equity I've learned.
yes.
I think Jim Carrey said something one time like he wished everyone had $1 million because you'd figure out it's not what makes you happy.
Mhm.
And that's pretty much all we're chasing these days is once I have enough money,
Yeah.
then I can do the other stuff. And, I think it's an important reminder that the real things, love and kindness and caring and lifting others up, I mean, that's living right there.
Mhm.
And knowing that, although we're going to experience tough times, is they don't define us.
Exactly.
They refine us, if you will, like you said.
Mhm.
Have you ever heard we've told this story so many times on here, but the silversmith story is about a group of people studying the Bible, and it says somewhere in there that God refines us like a silversmith does silver. And so a person goes and follows a silversmith and is like, hey, may I watch you today? Doesn't tell them about what they're studying. And she watches the silversmith take the first piece of silver and put it in the hottest pot of the fire. And he explains, I have to put it in the very middle, not the edges, not kind of around it, the hottest part. Why is that? Because that's where it burns off most of the impurities. Okay. And then so she watches him sit there watching that piece of silver the entire time. And she thinks, well, couldn't he set it down for a little bit and come back in like 5 minutes? She asks him that question. He says, not only can I not let it down, but I can't even take my eye off it, because if I do, I could damage it beyond repair. So when do you take it out? When the silversmith sees his image in it.
Oh, wow. Love that.
So that's kind of, being refined. And it's a tough one, but when you hear that and you've been through the fire, you're like, oh, if only it didn't have to be like that. But you kind of accept, you're like, I wouldn't be who I am now without it, which is a weird thing, and it just continues to push you and grow you if you let it. Make you happy and push you forward and have all kinds of great stuff.
Yeah.
Anyways, now we'll end it here pretty soon, but I got to ask you the question. Well, two questions. After being through what you've been through, you've touched on it already, obviously, but for a person who's wanting to know what you would define resiliency as now, what would you say to them?
What would I would just say, it's really resilience. It's just kind of like it's the moving forward, and I don't know. I guess I have a lot of meanings for resilience now.
Yeah. It shows up in different environments in different ways. You're totally right.
But
Resilience.
it's resilience is for me, it's just that I've moved forward, that we move forward in life, and we have those choices to move forward. And like I said, it's the strength, I guess, that I didn't know I had. And it's the knowledge of knowing that I'm being carried, and I'm being carried. And that resilience is just, one of my friends, she uses the analogy of, bouncing forward, resilience is bouncing forward. And that's really kind of what we're doing in life. And,
Yeah. I like that, bouncing forward. I've not heard that before. That's really good. And if someone was in their own shit creek right now as they're listening to us, who are debating the idea of giving up, whether it's giving up on the goal, giving up on something far greater than that, what would you say to get them to the next day?
Well, I've actually wrote something down just because I didn't want to mess this one up. But I just said, if you are listening and you feel like you're barely staying afloat, I want you to hear this. You're not failing. You are surviving. And, in your Shit Creek Survival podcast here, the terminology, keep paddling. And even if it's slow and even if it's bad, it doesn't have to be perfect. And the strength you don't see yet is already there. And one day you'll look back and realize the storm didn't take you, it shaped you.
I love it. That was such a great message. Well, Angie, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with us. It's such a blessing. Thank you for being that vulnerable. And I know it's going to help somebody out there and get them to kind of move in the right direction. And when they move in the right direction, maybe someone will watch them move in the right direction and they change their course of action. So it's a ripple effect, a pebble in the water.
Yes. Well, thank you, Cam, for having me. It's been a true honor. And, thank you for sharing your story and sharing this with so many people, because you are helping people. I know that for sure.
Dan's story is proof that resilience isn't about avoiding pain. It's about refusing to let the pain define you. Vulnerability is not weakness, and asking for help is not failure. And growth is always possible no matter where you're starting from. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who's in their own shit creek right now. It could help. Subscribe to Shit Creek Survivors for real stories, real tools, real hope, because none of us are meant to do this alone.